The second jobs of MPs remains under scrutiny following the Owen Paterson row last week, and now former Attorney General Geoffrey Cox has been found to have been paid hundreds of thousands of pounds from a second job that saw him vote in Parliament remotely from the Caribbean.
Yeah. It should be said there's a distinction between what both of those MPs were doing. One broke the rules, the other is working within the rules.
But the question of where we are right now, I think, is not did people break the rules, but what should the rules be?
So, more than 200 MPs have received earnings in the last year on top of their annual salary as a Member of Parliament, which is £81,000, 932 added on the end, ranging from £50 a year extra on top of that salary to almost £1 million. Joining us to discuss this, the chair of the Commons Standards Committee, the MP Chris Bryant. Very good morning,
to you,
Chris.
Susanna.
Very good morning. Good to see you this morning. Now, there is a discussion at the moment whether having any other job other than being an MP leads to a sort of undue influence when you're then in the House of Commons. Is there a legitimate reason for people to have other jobs outside their work, representing their constituency MPs and raising issues in Parliament?
Obviously, your primary job is to represent your constituents and to legislate and hold the government to account. That's what you're there for. I'm delighted that Rosanna Allen-Khan, for instance, is a doctor still working in accident and emergency. I think she does 2 nights a week still. I think that's good. And I think it's good that there are quite a few GPs on the Conservative side of the House as well, keeping their eye in and serving their community in a different way. So I would draw a distinction between those jobs where you effectively have a profession which you are continuing and you might want to continue afterwards, and you're still serving your local community, and the kind of job that Owen Paterson was involved in, which is basically, and I know you want to move on to other things, but we still haven't dealt with this bit yet. We haven't enforced the rules yet in relation to Owen Paterson, where he was taking more than £112,000 a year, which is more than the average cost of a home in my constituency in the Rhondda. He was taking that to peddle influence on behalf of those paying clients with government ministers. And that's where I think that there is manifest corruption. And unfortunately, because of the rather bizarre shenanigans last week from the government, and in particular from Boris Johnson directly, we ended up with a situation where Tory MPs were dragooned through the lobbies and forced to sort of try and create a new committee, blow up the whole standard system, which meant that the rules weren't enforced on Owen Paterson. And we still have to rectify that problem. We still will have to have a motion. I had hoped that the government was going to table it today. I've given them a solution to be able to do that fairly swiftly, but unfortunately they've not taken that.
Chris,
so when we don't even enforce the rules that we do have, it's a bit difficult to see how we're going to enforce other rules that people might want to put in place.
If we could, Chris, you're chair of the Standards Committee in the Commons. If you could help us all understand the difference technically between lobbying, which breaches the rules, and consultancy. We'll ignore all other types of jobs, being a barrister, being a nurse, being a doctor, but doing consultancy, and specifically political consultancy when you're an MP. What is allowed, what isn't allowed?
You're not allowed to lobby on behalf of your paying clients. Not allowed to lobby government ministers or government officials on behalf of your paying clients. You can make as many speeches as you want outside Parliament. You're not allowed to ask questions in the House. You're not allowed to lead debates in the House. All of that is absolutely banned if you have paying clients, and you have to declare any clients that you have.
But that means you could take
Martin, just let me finish, because for the last few years, there has been an argument that we should just ban all consultancy work. And I'm quite sympathetic to that argument, but that hasn't been the rule that was decided in previous parliaments. At the moment, the Standards Committee that I sit on is considering all of these matters. We've been doing a review of the Code of Conduct to decide what should be in the rules and shouldn't be in the rules. We'll be producing a report in the next few weeks. And the Committee on Standards in Public Life has recommended that we should ban all consultancy work where you're effectively sort of advising businesses on how to steer their way around Parliament, because that just feels like you're kind of selling your influence, and that is inappropriate.
That was the bit I wanted to say, because where that seems to me to draw the line. If you are trading off your position as an MP to advise companies of how to work the political system while you're a sitting MP, it would seem to me that that is a breach, a conflict of interest between what is your prime concern, representing your constituents, or using your knowledge of an MP to help a company that's paying you. And it would seem that
absolutely,
that's a straightforward
Martin,
conflict.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And one of the rules, which is very clear, is that wherever there is a conflict of interest, you have to resolve that conflict of interest in the public interest, not in your private interest.
Who judges that?
The Commissioner on Standards does. The Independent Parliamentary Commissioner on Standards would investigate that if there were an allegation or a complaint, or if she had seen something that she thought was inappropriate. And then that would, once she's completed her investigation, if she thought there'd been a breach of the rules, then that would come to my committee for adjudication and for deciding on a sanction, exactly as we did with Owen Paterson and we've done with other cases in the past. But you're quite right. You can't use, the letters MP still have an amazing magic sometimes. I've written on occasion on behalf of a constituent, for instance, trying to sort out an insurance issue when somebody got caught in Spain and their wife died, unfortunately. Now, there's no reason why the letters MP should make a dramatic difference in law, but in actual fact, they did, and we managed to get the whole thing sorted. So using those magic letters MP inappropriately is a problem.
Can I ask you, Chris Bryant, can I ask you, because I'm sure you've seen the front of the Daily Mail today, is it OK that Geoffrey Cox, who is a QC, he's a barrister, he's a former Attorney General, but he is currently a backbench MP, he's earned hundreds of thousands of pounds in a second job, part of which advising the government of the British Virgin Islands. Is that OK? I mean, he's doing it within Susanna, the rules.
Yeah,
but
Susanna,
is it OK?
You're going to hate me now, but I'm chair of the committee that if there were an allegation against him, a charge against him that were investigated, it would come to my committee. So I have to be scrupulously fair and say that I'm not going to comment on that case. I simply can't. However, the point I would make is, in the last 2 years, as MP in the Rhondda, I've had more casework. We've been dealing with thousands and thousands of issues for individuals and families and businesses in the Rhondda over the last 2 years, more than I can ever remember in my 20 years as MP. I did vote remotely quite often from my bedroom in Porth. But honestly, I just don't know how anybody would fit in that much time.
Right. Very simple question. Just briefly, is there any rule prohibiting somebody from advising foreign governments when they're an MP?
Well, interesting point. No, there isn't at the moment. There isn't a law that prohibits that. There is a strong argument that there should be a law. But there isn't. Law, I would say, incidentally, it should be a law, not just a rule of Parliament. As I understand it, the government is intending to bring in a foreign lobbying act of some kind. We've yet to see any kind of details of that. But I've, for instance, argued for a very long time that people who have Russian clients who are peddling Russian and Putin influence in the UK should not be able to do so through the parliamentary process.
Right so now, that would not be a breach. I would welcome
such a law if one were introduced.
Right now, that wouldn't be a breach, though, would it? It's not, because there is no rule against it.
Okay.
Whatever people think of it, that isn't a breach.
No.
Not that I'm aware of. However, it's not always just about rules in Parliament. It's also about standards. And some of those standards are based on principles like leadership and fairness and selflessness and so on. I think and in the end, of course, if any member brings Parliament into disrepute, then the Commissioner can investigate that and something could be brought forward to us.
Okay.
But I suppose my main thing is that I know a little bit about some of the British overseas territories because when I was a Foreign Office Minister, I had to suspend one of them for corruption. I would find it very bizarre if a British Member of Parliament were supporting a government in an anti-sleaze corruption case on the wrong side of the argument. I'd find that very odd.
Chris, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Yeah. Look, it's a live but very tricky issue. It's a nuanced issue, isn't it? Because, as we keep saying, there are people working in their other jobs who bring really important experience. People who are working as GPs, in social care, for instance, in the NHS, in other roles, really important experience to the Commons. So, is it not the case that people who also have jobs in business are also bringing really important experience to the Commons?
I think second jobs, as someone sitting in not doing his day job today, second jobs can educate you in what you do. And in fact, the whole premise behind the House of Lords is that people come in with expertise from other jobs, and that's allowed and permitted. But the Commons, for me, the issue is one of where there is conflict between who you represent. Do you primarily represent the interests of your constituents and of the UK population, or do you represent somewhere else? And I think that the truth of this debate is it will not end up of should we ban second jobs. It's where that line is currently drawn very narrowly on lobbying. Should it be expanded so that it includes consultancy? Clearly, there's a push. Chris, while his Chair of Standards is a Labour MP, there's a push from the Labour side that it should be. It will be interesting to see what the Conservative side say.